hear a number of different recordings, and you will have to answer questions on what you hear. There will be time for you to read the instructions and questions, and you will have a chance to check your work. All the recordings will be played once only. The test is in 4 sections. Write all of your answers in the listening question booklet. At the end of the real test, you will be given 10 minutes to transfer your answers to an answer sheet. Now turn to Section 1 of your booklet. Section 1. You are going to hear a conversation which happened in a travel agency. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 5. Before we start the test, look at the example of your question booklet and listen to the tape.
Hi, I would like to make a reservation for a round-trip plane ticket from London to New York.
Welcome to the Student Travel Agency. London to New York. Let me see if we have any student specials for that flight. Yes, we do in fact. What days would you like to fly?
I am looking for a flight around the 10th of October or so.
In the tape, the man says he will fly from London to New York. Therefore, A is the correct answer. Now we will play the recording. Listen to the tape and answer questions 1 to 5.
Hi, I would like to make a reservation for a round-trip plane ticket from London to New York.
Welcome to the Student Travel Agency. London to New York. Let me see if we have any student specials for that flight. Yes, we do in fact. What days would you like to fly?
I am looking for a flight around the 10th of October or so.
And how about your return date?
Ideally, the 31st of October.
Let me check our computers to see if these dates are available. Are you looking for economy class or first class?
Economy class will be just fine.
We have an open flight on the 10th, but for your returning flight, the 31st of October is already fully booked. If you want to upgrade to first class, there are openings for the 31st. Just a few seats left, though.
How much do I have to add for first class?
First class will be around 20 to 25% more.
Well, that is not worth it. I would rather just fly on another day. Do I have any other options?
There are open seats back to London on the 1st of November. There are openings for first class that day too.
No, I won't be able to do that because I have to work. Is there anything before the 31st? Maybe the 30th or 29th?
Let me check. You can fly on the 29th, but not the 30th.
The 29th is a little bit early. Is there any way I can be on a waiting list of some sort?
Of course, but you should still confirm a return date just to be safe.
OK. How about if I book a return date on the 29th and add my name to the waiting list for the 31st? Can I do that?
Sure, I can do that for you. Do you also want to add your name on the waiting list for the 30th also? I would recommend this in the scenario that you do not get the flight for the 31st.
That is a good idea. How much will the round trip cost?
I will calculate your price for you. Your total will be £565, not including tax.
Now look at questions 6 to 10. Now listen to the tape and answer questions 6 to 10.
That's not too bad. Is there any discount for students?
That is already including the discount. Without the discount, the price is easily over £600.
OK, that sounds good then. Please put me down for those dates.
I will need your information. Name and student identification number, please.
Kenneth Conley, student ID 92123020.
Your phone number, please.
87052109.
Please tell me your mailing address.
354 Westchester Drive, London.
Thank you very much, sir. How would you like to pay for the ticket?
I think I will pay in cash.
Well, you don't need to pay right now, just when you come to pick up the tickets. You will need to pick up the tickets at least 2 weeks before departure.
That is no problem. One quick question. What happens if for some reason I need to cancel my trip?
The student discount tickets are unfortunately non-refundable. However, if your cancellation is before 24 hours of takeoff time, then you can reschedule your flight for another day. If the cancellation is within 24 hours, then you forfeit your ticket.
I understand. Well, thank you very much. I will see you next week.
See you then.
This is the end of Section 1. You now have 30 seconds to check your answers.
Section 2. In this section, you'll hear an introduction on cheesemaking. You have half a minute to read the questions 11 to 20 first. Now listen to the monologue carefully and answer questions 11 to 20. Cheese is one of those foods that we tend to take for granted as always having been with us, and it's odd to think that someone somewhere must have discovered the process to make cheeses. That takes place today. In the studio to tell us all about it is Monica Maxwell.
Today, we all know that the process of making cheeses takes place when microorganisms get into milk and bring about changes in its physical and biochemical structure. Well, obviously, we don't know who discovered the process, but it's thought that it came from Southwest Asia, about 8,000 years ago. In the early time, there were mainly two types of cheeses. One of them was rather tasteless and bland, in the case of the so-called fresh cheeses, which are eaten immediately after the milk has coagulated. And another one was rough-tasting and salty, in the case of the ripened cheeses, which are made by adding salt to the soft fresh cheese and allowing other biochemical processes to continue so that a stronger taste and a more solid texture resulted. The ancient Romans changed all that. They were great pioneers in the art of cheesemaking, and the different varieties of cheese they invented and the techniques for producing them spread with them to the countries they invaded. This spread of new techniques took place between about 60 BC and 300 AD. You can still trace their influence in the English word cheese, which comes ultimately from the Latin word Caseus, that's C-A-S-E-U-S. At this stage in history, people weren't aware in a scientific way of the role of different microorganisms and enzymes in producing different types of cheese, but they knew from experience that cheese's tastes were relevant to something. If you kept your milk or your pre-cheese mixture at a certain temperature or in a certain environment, things would turn out in a certain way. In the 19th century, with the increasing knowledge about microorganism, there came the next great step forward in cheesemaking. Once it was known exactly which microorganism was involved in the different stages of producing a cheese and how the presence of different microorganisms affected the taste, it was possible to introduce them deliberately and to industrialize the process. Nowadays, cheese is made on a large scale in factories, although the small producer working from his dairy farm continued to exist and still exists today. Cheesemaking moved very much into the world of technology and industrial processes, although because the aim is still to produce something that people like to eat, there's still an important role for human judgment. People still go round tasting the young cheese at different stages to see how it's getting on, and may add a bit of this or that to improve the final taste. Whatever the scale of production, there is still room for the development of art alongside the technology.
That is the end of section 2. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Section 3. You will hear an interview with Professor Green from a local university which enrolls a large number of overseas students in its courses. He is talking to Indra, a student representative, about the importance of attending lectures. First, you will have half a minute to look at questions 21 to 30. Now listen carefully to the interview and answer questions 21 to 30.
Good afternoon, Professor Green. Thank you for your time today. I wonder if you could explain why you think it is important for us to attend lectures in a course that we're studying.
Well, despite the increasing dependence on online communication these days, I do think it is important. Apart from delivering the content of the lecture itself, I believe that there are some general communication benefits from having large groups of students together in one place. For lecturers, it is an opportunity for us to address many students together at one time. For students, it helps you to feel part of the wider learning community who are following the course. You can interact with each other both before and after the lecture to discuss the ideas and content, networking with each other and comparing your notes.
But isn't most of this achieved, as you said, these days through online communication?
Well, lecturers do communicate with students online, of course, but we usually only give a summary or notes of the lecture, so there are significant differences. When you go to lectures, you get more of an insight into what the lecturer considers important. We give additional commentary and anecdotes, and by voice emphasis, we can alert you to the key concepts, theories and issues of the subject. By not attending lectures, you might miss crucial information about what we are expecting in an assignment. You know, these extra things can make a difference.
OK, but there are tutorials. There is a lot of interaction between students and lecturers in tutorials. Can't all this be done in tutorial discussion groups instead of having lectures?
Yes, to some extent. But during lectures, the lecturers can sensitise you to the debates and the controversies that are dealt with in the literature. This can help you think more critically about the subject. So then, when you come to the tutorial, you'll be able to come with some questions and ideas for discussion. The result of this is that the tutorial class will be more beneficial for everyone who attends.
I see your point. However, surely this also depends on whether students are able to understand and follow the lecture well. What strategies do you recommend to help students get the most out of lectures?
I would say that first of all, it is important to do some pre-reading. By doing this, you get an orientation to the topic. You'll become familiar with the key terms and you'll be able to follow the lecture points more easily. I also think it is good to arrive early to collect handouts and to find a seat where it is easy to see and hear what is going on. Then, importantly, during the lecture itself, you need to be attentive.
I know from experience that it is often difficult to be attentive. What can students do to improve their attentiveness during the lecture?
I think that there are two keys to following a lecture successfully: using the visual cues and using active listening techniques. By maintaining eye contact with the lecturer and following how the lecturer makes use of the slides, whiteboard and so on, you are using the lecturer's visual cues, which help make the structure of the information clear and give you a sense of what's important. Then, using active listening techniques will also help you to process the information.
What do you mean by active listening techniques?
Well, you need to pay attention to the methods the lecturer uses to highlight important information. As I said before, in the spoken language of a lecture, we get the benefit of things such as stress and intonation, use of examples and anecdotes, as well as the language signals used to show relationships between ideas.
Yes, I see what you mean. These things will be missing in written summaries. And what about taking notes? Does that help?
Taking notes helps you to concentrate, so I would certainly advise you to do that. It's difficult to listen and write good notes at the same time, so it does take some training.
Yes, taking notes needs a lot of practice, I've found. Do you have any other advice?
Well, I can't finish without stressing the importance of formulating questions while you are listening. During the lecture, you should ask yourself questions about the content of the lecture and the points you are following. Ask questions like, what are the benefits or problems? What other examples are there? How does it work? Why does this happen? This will keep you focused and actively engaged in the content of the lecture.
Professor Green, thank you very much for your valuable tips and your time today.
You are very welcome.
That is the end of section 3. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Section 4. You will hear part of a lecture on the current and future use of mobile phones. You now have 30 seconds to read questions 31 to 35.
Okay, now today we're looking at changes in communication, and specifically changes that have just happened or are likely to happen in the next few years. Key to this is the mobile phone, which is increasingly being seen as an all-purpose system rather than just a phone. If you only use your phone for texting and making calls now, you will be amazed at how you'll be using it in the future. The technology has been developed for a range of other uses. For example, phones could be used so that if you are meeting someone and they get lost, you could send them a map of your location to help them. This will save all those complicated explanations over the phone and our poor friends or colleagues trying to drive and find out where they are at the same time. And if you get bored waiting, or if you're traveling, for example, you will soon be able to see TV news on your phone as it is actually being broadcast. This means that you won't have to miss any of your favorites if you were away for a few days. Most people have got used to texting now, and young people send pictures to each other. But what is exciting is the possibility of putting music with them before you send them. And it's not all frivolous. Phones are going to become even more critical in business and education. Some recent developments have a highly practical usage. So, for example, as lecturers, we will be able to send everybody a text to let them know if lectures have been cancelled. And the new phones could have a further use in education, as well as business, as they will enable us to go to any destination, such as when we are doing a field trip, for instance, and from there to send data directly to a computer so that we can access it when we get home. This means we will no longer be limited by what the phone can store.
You now have 30 seconds to read questions 36 to 40.
And it's interesting to look at the different ways that men and women use phones now, as that does affect how the technology will develop. Some research has been done on how people use phones, and some of the results are surprising. One of the increasing usages of mobile phones is to get all sorts of data, such as phone numbers, the weather, train times, etc. And while there's been an attempt to set up connections with things that women might be interested in accessing, it is overwhelmingly men who do this. But what about the traditional use of a phone? To speak to people? I suppose we would predict that it is mainly women who use phones as a method of contact for friends and family, but, in fact, the genders exploit this facility equally. I've spoken about the increased business usages that phones will offer, and I suppose we would associate this usage with men. The survey picked up, though, that women are often working from home or catching up with work in the evenings, so they use phones in this way as much as men do. Most of us are aware we can store photos on our phones. It's an ideal method of capturing a moment wherever you are. Women tend to be the group that keep photos on their phones, but it seems that men use their phones to actually take pictures much more than women do. And of course, all this knowledge affects the marketing that the companies will do in order to sell